She whispered, "I shouldn't be doing this." But every look, every touch, told a different story. The story opens with the male narrator, a 25-year-old man who's quietly observant, sitting in a small, sunlit cafe tucked into the corner of a bustling city street. He's sipping coffee and reading a book, the scent of freshly brewed espresso mixing with the faint aroma of pastries. His life, predictable and measured, takes a sudden detour the moment he notices her. She is in her early 40s, poised and graceful, her presence unassuming yet magnetic. There's an ease to her confidence, but the briefest shadow of vulnerability flits across her features when she pauses, glancing out the window. Their first interaction is subtle, almost accidental. She reaches for a sugar packet at the same time he does. Their hands brush lightly, fingers grazing, skin warming at the contact. Neither pulls away immediately, a silent acknowledgement passing between them. He feels a strange flutter, a mix of curiosity and nervous anticipation, while she tucks a strand of hair behind her ear, her cheeks coloring ever so slightly. It's a fleeting moment, but it lingers in the air like the faint aftertaste of coffee. He notices the small details, the gentle tilt of her head when she smiles at the barista, the quiet rhythm of her movements, the way her eyes momentarily meet his before quickly glancing away. He is drawn in not by grand gestures, but by these understated, human nuances. She seems aware of the subtle pull between them, but she hides it behind a composed exterior. The internal tension is palpable. He senses that she knows something unspoken is happening, yet neither of them crosses the line. Their initial conversation is polite, casual, almost incidental, a shared comment about the cafe's playlist, a brief discussion of the book he's reading. But the weight of their mutual curiosity hangs in the space between words. Her voice is warm, confident, and slightly husky, and he catches a note of hesitation when she laughs at his offhand remark, as if testing the boundaries of propriety. He's conscious of the age gap but more aware of the emotional pull, the quiet intensity of noticing someone who, in an instant, feels profoundly significant. There's no rush, no overt declaration of attraction, only the slow, creeping awareness of connection. She, too, is conflicted. He senses her internal dialogue, glimpsed in a fleeting expression of indecision, the quick downward glance, the small sigh she seems to try and hide. "I shouldn't be doing this." Her demeanor seems to whisper, even if she doesn't speak it aloud. By the end of the encounter, they part ways with only a lingering glance, a brief brush of shoulders as she moves past him. It's charged with unspoken questions, a silent acknowledgement of mutual intrigue. Neither fully understands what this connection will mean, but both feel it as a tangible presence, a spark waiting, quietly, to grow. The scene closes on his perspective, the warmth of her touch still tingling in his fingers, her eyes etched into his memory, and the faint sense that his life has shifted, imperceptibly yet irrevocably, in the span of one seemingly ordinary morning. After their first encounter, the male narrator finds himself unexpectedly noticing her presence in his daily routines. Perhaps it's the same cafe where she now seems to occupy a favorite corner, or a quiet local bookstore where their paths continue to intersect? Each meeting feels accidental yet purposeful, and a subtle sense of anticipation begins to take root. During one such meeting, they finally exchange more than fleeting smiles. The conversation begins casually, a shared observation about a book on the shelf or the rhythm of the cafe's playlist, but gradually deepens. She talks about her work, her hobbies, small personal frustrations, and moments of vulnerability she rarely reveals to others. He listens with careful attention, sensing the quiet tension behind her composed exterior. There's a softness in her eyes, a vulnerability barely contained beneath her confident demeanor, and he feels privileged simply to witness it. She hesitates as she speaks, almost as if weighing whether she should share more, her words sometimes trailing off. At one point, she murmurs, "I shouldn't be doing this." A whisper more to herself than to him, yet he catches it clearly. It is not a statement of regret but of awareness, an acknowledgement that their connection exists in a space society might frown upon, yet she cannot deny its pull. He notices the subtle cues accompanying her admission, a slight flush across her cheeks, her fingers nervously twisting a napkin, her gaze briefly dropping before meeting his again. The physical proximity in these moments is understated but charged. Their hands occasionally brush while reaching for the same item, or she leans in slightly to read a title over his shoulder. Each touch, each accidental closeness, is electric without being overt. He feels warmth linger on his skin long after contact, a gentle ache of anticipation and curiosity. When she laughs at something he says, she leans just a little closer than necessary, her hair brushing the side of his face, and he notices the faint scent of her perfume, soft, elegant, and subtly intoxicating. Their exchange is balanced, a delicate dance of openness and restraint. He shares small personal anecdotes, careful not to overshare, while she reveals glimpses of her own life, her joys, and disappointments. There is a rhythm to their conversation, a flow that feels both natural and charged with the unspoken. Both are aware of the age gap and the potential for judgment from the outside world, yet these concerns are muted by the immediacy of their connection. By the end of their encounter, there is a lingering energy that neither can ignore. He notices the gentle pressure of her hand against his for a moment as she gestures, the warmth of her presence as she stands nearby, and the subtle intensity in her eyes as she finally leaves. Their connection, though still tentative, has deepened, a fragile thread of intimacy that neither wants to sever. As he watches her walk away, he is left with a mixture of longing and excitement. The subtle vulnerability she has revealed ignites something profound in him, and he feels the quiet certainty that this is only the beginning of a slow, deliberate, and deeply emotional journey. By now, the male narrator finds himself noticing her presence in ways he can't ignore. Their encounters are still casual, often in the same cafe, bookstore, or even passing on a quiet street, but the tension between them has grown, almost imperceptibly. Every glance, every brush of hands, carries a weight neither had felt before. He begins to anticipate seeing her, his day brightened by the possibility of her presence, and he catches himself replaying the memory of her laughter or the subtle tilt of her head. In this phase of their connection, words become secondary to the unspoken. She smiles in ways that linger, tilts her body just slightly toward him during conversation, and lets her gaze hold his a second too long. There is a playful teasing in her demeanor, a lightness that contrasts with the seriousness of the undercurrent between them. She tests boundaries carefully, aware of the age gap, yet unable, or unwilling, to completely hide her attraction. The physical proximity is understated but charged. While standing side by side to reach for a book or an item on a counter, their shoulders brush, sending an unanticipated warmth through both of them. A simple touch, a hand briefly resting on his arm while she laughs, a casual nudge in conversation, carries more significance than either will openly acknowledge. The narrator becomes acutely aware of the sensations, the warmth of her skin, the softness of her hair brushing against his shoulder, and the faint, almost imperceptible flutter in his chest with each fleeting touch. At the same time, he notices her vulnerabilities more clearly. A brief shadow crosses her face when she's distracted, a faint sigh when she's anxious, a quiver in her lips when she hesitates before speaking. These moments reveal the layers behind her composed exterior, drawing him closer emotionally as well as physically. He admires her confidence and strength, yet he senses the careful way she guards her heart, a subtle acknowledgement of risk, both societal and personal. Their conversations deepen, though still wrapped in casualness. A shared joke, a quiet reflection on a mutual interest, or a fleeting discussion about work or life keeps the connection alive, but the unspoken attraction simmers just beneath the surface. She might brush her fingers against his hand, accidentally, linger a fraction longer in shared space, or tilt her head slightly when listening to him speak. Each micro-gesture is electric, and he notices the racing of his heart, the small shivers running through him, and the quiet anticipation that something meaningful is unfolding. Internal tension mounts as both recognize the delicate balance between propriety and desire. He wonders if she is as aware of the depth of their connection as he is, while she seems caught between restraint and curiosity. Every glance and accidental touch becomes a conversation in itself, a dialogue of subtle longing, restrained impulses, and emotional discovery. By the end of this stage, the narrator is fully aware of the magnetic pull between them, and he feels the story beginning to move beyond mere encounters. There is a promise in these lingering glances, a tension that whispers of more intimate, meaningful moments to come, a slow, inevitable draw toward emotional and physical closeness that neither can deny. The narrative reaches a pivotal moment in their slow burn connection. The male narrator and the woman find themselves in a quieter, more intimate setting, perhaps a softly lit cafe during the evening, a park bench under the gentle glow of a street lamp, or a rainy evening where the city hums softly around them. The outside world seems to fade, leaving only the two of them, suspended in a space that feels at once safe and charged with unspoken tension. Their conversation, which began casually as always, gradually shifts to a deeper level. She speaks of moments in her life that she rarely shares, personal regrets, fleeting joys, and the subtle struggles that have shaped her. He listens, attentive and gentle, offering empathy without judgment, creating a sense of emotional safety. In response, he shares small, meaningful glimpses of his own life, enough to reveal his sincerity without overexposing himself. It is in this quiet exchange that the turning point occurs. Her voice drops slightly, almost a whisper, as she says, "I shouldn't be doing this, but I can't stop thinking about you." The words are not rushed or dramatic, they are delicate, confessional, and raw in their honesty. Her admission hangs between them like a fragile glass ornament, shimmering in the soft light. She doesn't elaborate, but the weight of her vulnerability is enough. The male narrator feels a mix of surprise, understanding, and relief that her feelings mirror his own internal turmoil. He responds with care, choosing words that honor her vulnerability while acknowledging his own emotions. He doesn't leap forward or make grand declarations. Instead, he mirrors her honesty, saying something along the lines of, "I've been feeling the same way. I didn't know if I should, but I can't deny it either." The exchange is measured but profound, a verbal acknowledgement of the connection they have been cultivating. Physical gestures punctuate their conversation, subtle yet laden with meaning. She reaches for his hand instinctively, fingers brushing and lingering. He feels the warmth of her skin, the gentle tremor in her grip, and the quiet steadiness of her presence beside him. Perhaps her shoulder nudges against his, a fleeting touch that speaks volumes. The sensory richness, the scent of rain on the street, the faint aroma of coffee, the soft hum of distant conversation, heightens the intimacy, creating a multi-layered emotional experience. This is the moment when restraint and desire converge. Both recognize the age gap and the societal implications of their growing closeness, yet they are momentarily freed from external judgment. The focus is entirely on the emotional truth between them, their mutual attraction, respect, and burgeoning trust. By the end of this scene, the air between them is charged with a new intensity. The confession has broken a barrier, allowing for emotional vulnerability and the possibility of deeper connection. There is no rush to escalate physically beyond small, YouTube-safe touches, but the foundation has been laid, a slow, deliberate, and deeply emotional intimacy that will guide the rest of their story. After her quiet confession, the dynamic between the male narrator and the woman begins to shift. There's a newfound intimacy in their interactions, a gentle warmth that neither can ignore. Their conversations are no longer just casual exchanges but become spaces where trust and subtle vulnerability can flourish. She begins to allow herself small, quiet moments of comfort in his presence, and he reciprocates with attentiveness and care. One afternoon, they find themselves walking together through a park. The air carries a hint of autumn, crisp and scented with fallen leaves. The narrator notices the way she slightly leans into him as they navigate uneven paths, a gesture so natural it might go unnoticed by anyone else but feels electrifying to him. Their hands occasionally brush, lingering just long enough to awaken a rush of warmth, a small but significant acknowledgement of the intimacy budding between them. She laughs softly at something he says, the sound light yet intimate, and he feels the gentle vibration of her chest as she chuckles. He notices the subtle ways she mirrors his movements, turning her body slightly toward him when speaking, adjusting her pace to match his, a quiet synchrony that speaks louder than words. These small physical cues deepen their connection, hinting at the growing comfort and closeness they feel. During another encounter, Perhaps in a cozy indoor setting, he notices her shoulders tense briefly under stress, and instinctively, he rests a hand lightly on her back. The gesture is unassuming, careful, yet it conveys support and reassurance. She leans into the touch for a moment, just enough to let him feel the warmth of her presence. He is acutely aware of the sensations, the heat of her skin beneath his palm, the subtle pulse of her heartbeat, and the soft exhales she releases as tension eases. Shared laughter and gentle teasing become hallmarks of their growing relationship. She playfully nudges him while recounting a story, and he feels a jolt of warmth at the contact. In turn, he matches her wit with quiet humor, noticing the way her eyes sparkle and how the corners of her mouth soften when she smiles at him. These interactions, light yet charged, create a rhythm to their connection, one that blends affection, mutual understanding, and unspoken attraction. Despite the warmth and growing closeness, both remain aware of the age gap and societal expectations. Their touches are careful and non-sexual, but each fleeting contact carries significance, a language of desire expressed in restrained ways. A hand resting briefly over his during a conversation, a shoulder brushing against his as she moves past, the tilt of her head as she listens, each becomes a meaningful chapter in their slow-burning story. By the end of this stage, the emotional intimacy between them has deepened significantly. There's a sense of comfort, trust, and mutual care, interwoven with a subtle undercurrent of longing. The foundation for deeper connection has been laid. They are no longer simply two people noticing each other, but two individuals slowly merging worlds, emotions, and hearts, all while respecting boundaries and savoring the tension of anticipation. By this stage, the emotional and romantic tension between the male narrator and the woman has built to a subtle yet undeniable peak. Their connection is no longer tentative. Every glance, every brush of hands, every shared moment carries weight, heavy with unspoken longing. Both are acutely aware of the boundaries and the societal expectations that hover around them, yet neither can resist the quiet pull toward one another. The setting amplifies the intimacy of this stage. Perhaps they are walking together on a quiet, dimly lit street after an evening out, or sitting side by side on a bench in a nearly empty park. The world around them hums softly, the distant murmur of traffic, the gentle rustle of leaves, or the soft patter of rain against the pavement. In these shared silences, the narrator notices the heightened awareness of her presence, the way she adjusts her posture slightly toward him, the soft brush of her hair against his arm, the faint warmth radiating from her hand when it hovers near his. A minor crisis or shared challenge, an unexpected problem at work, a sudden rainstorm, or a miscommunication that requires mutual effort, brings them physically closer than usual. She may instinctively seek reassurance, subtly leaning against him, or allowing their knees to touch while they sit. The narrator feels the closeness acutely, the warmth of her body, the rhythm of her breathing, the quiet steadiness of her pulse against his side. Every micro-gesture, the brief press of her hand to guide him, the subtle tilt of her head as she listens, speaks volumes of trust and mutual attraction. Conversation at this point is almost secondary to the emotions in the air. Words are laden with implication rather than clarity. She might murmur something like, "If this is wrong, why does it feel so right?" Or he might respond with a quiet reflection of his own longing, careful not to overstep. These verbal exchanges, measured yet intimate, deepen the tension and highlight the complexity of their feelings. Desire tempered by caution, longing tempered by respect. The physicality remains non-sexual but deeply charged. A hand rests lightly over another during a shared moment of laughter or concern. Shoulders brush as they turn toward each other. A casual touch lingers longer than intended, sending warmth through both. He is conscious of the electricity in these touches, the subtle shiver running through him, the warmth spreading from her skin, and the grounding sensation of their closeness. She, too, responds in kind, leaning in slightly when sharing a thought, letting her fingers hover near his in moments of hesitation. Internally, both wrestle with the tension. The male narrator contemplates the age gap and the delicate nature of their budding connection, while she navigates her own hesitation and the thrill of emotional intimacy. Despite these conflicts, they are drawn irresistibly toward one another, caught in a slow, deliberate dance of proximity, touch, and unspoken desire. By the end of this scene, the tension is palpable, yet unresolved, carefully balanced between restraint and longing. The story has reached its emotional crescendo, leaving viewers on edge, fully invested in the outcome, and yearning for the warmth and resolution that will come in the next stage. After the tension of their shared moments and whispered confessions, the relationship between the male narrator and the woman reaches a gentle, emotionally satisfying resolution. There is no sudden leap or dramatic culmination. Rather, the story concludes with quiet intimacy, mutual understanding, and a sense of emotional equilibrium that reflects the natural pace of their connection. The setting mirrors this sense of calm and closeness. Perhaps they are seated together on a park bench at dusk, the air carrying the soft scent of evening blooms, or sharing a quiet moment in a sunlit cafe where the world outside seems distant. The narrator notices the relaxed curve of her shoulders, the softness in her gaze, and the subtle warmth that radiates from her presence. She, in turn, allows herself to lean slightly closer, resting an arm lightly against his or letting her hand hover over his for just a moment longer than necessary. Conversation is gentle and unhurried. They reflect on the journey they have shared, the subtle glances, accidental touches, and moments of vulnerability that built the foundation of their bond. There is laughter, quiet teasing, and the shared recognition of the delicate dance they navigated, balancing societal perception, the age gap, and their own emotions. Words are warm, thoughtful, and sincere, reflecting the depth of connection they have cultivated. Physical affection remains subtle but meaningful. A hand brushes lightly across another during a shared smile. She may rest her head briefly on his shoulder while walking. He might lightly tuck a stray strand of hair behind her ear, noting the gentle softness against his fingertips. Each gesture is deliberate, measured, and tender, conveying affection without rushing toward overt romance. The narrator is acutely aware of the comfort these small touches provide: the warmth of her skin, the steadiness of her heartbeat, the reassuring weight of her presence. Emotionally, both characters are at ease with one another. The woman, once hesitant and aware of the risks, now allows herself to trust him fully, feeling secure in the boundaries they have respected and the intimacy they have nurtured. He, in turn, feels a profound sense of connection, understanding that their bond is built not just on attraction but on shared vulnerability, empathy, and respect. The age gap and societal perceptions, once sources of tension, now exist merely as a backdrop. They no longer define or limit the genuine closeness they have created. The story closes with a moment of quiet togetherness. Perhaps they sit side by side, their hands resting near each other, sharing a contented silence. She smiles softly, her eyes reflecting both warmth and trust, and he responds with a gentle, understanding smile of his own. The subtle physical closeness, combined with the emotional transparency they have cultivated, leaves them both feeling fulfilled. In this ending, the slow burn romance achieves a YouTube-safe resolution: no grand gestures, no sexual intimacy, just meaningful, tender moments of closeness that resonate deeply with viewers. The connection between them is secure, warm, and human, leaving audiences with a sense of calm satisfaction and the promise of continued emotional intimacy. The story concludes not with a dramatic climax but with a steady, comforting heartbeat, the perfect echo of the journey they have shared.